Okay, I'm going to start off by making a plug for Vincent. If you ever need a trivia night partner, Vincent is your guy. He knows more random facts than 80% of dads that I've met, which I learned last night. So high praise. Okay, here's my next joke. Prepare yourselves to laugh. I am bringing you, as your AgTech investor, I am going to bring you your lowest tech presentation here. There will be no slides. Brace yourselves. I'm just going to talk this whole time. We'll go on a journey together. So I'm going to start by introducing myself so that you understand the perspectives that I have on investing. Okay, I'm ready. Bonnie Brayton. I call myself a plant biochemist, but that's really inaccurate. I'm not an expert like many of you in the room. I'm more of a generalist in different areas of science. I started off as a chemistry undergrad. I did organic chem research. I did aerosol chemistry research in atmospheric contexts. When I went to grad school, I moved into plant biology, but specifically I studied plant-pathogen crosstalk. And in that molecular crosstalk between plants and pathogens, I wasn't actually doing pathogenesis or anything cool like that. I actually just did protein biochemistry. So that's my academic background. From there, I did many other random things. I, after grad school, went to a small biotech company of about 100 people. We did, our team in that biotech company did the biological chemistry for the company. Some of you might be aware of it. We have at least one other expat here today, this week. I worked for Mendel Biotechnology. Mendel had cloned all of the transcription factors in Arabidopsis, and then they made overexpressing lines for each one of those transcription factors. And what did they do with this? They worked with the multinational companies. So if a multinational company had a gene lead that they were interested in that was a transcription factor, they would ask Mendel to model what they did in Arabidopsis for their mode of action studies. So in that context, at my first startup, I worked with major companies, but from a startup perspective, and again, doing biological chemistry. From there, I took a personal pivot. I moved from the Bay Area to my husband's hometown of Honolulu, Hawaii. And there I couldn't get a job at Monsanto or Pioneer because I didn't drive a tractor and I couldn't speak Tagalog, and those were the two skills I needed to land a job at that time. So I went and I worked for the John A. Burns School of Medicine at the University of Hawaii, and I took a big sidestep academically. I was studying HIV and human immunology and next-gen sequencing. So that's what I did there. So you're starting to see like the patchwork of random stuff that I've done. I did a couple years at the Research Corp of Hawaii, and I decided I really wanted to go back to industry. So at that time, the perfect job opened up for me at Pioneer, and I spent the next 5 years leading a team and trying to take pollen precursor cells, microspores, and fool them into becoming embryos, which can be a component of breeding technologies. It's doubled haploid technology. So I did that for a number of years. And then I took an even bigger leap. I decided, I'm gonna go get an MBA. I don't know anything about business. I've never taken a business class as a scientist. It's time for something new. So, and by the way, Corteva is filthy with scientists who have MBAs. So really, I was just following the path set for me by many other people. And I actually left the lab at that time. So I moved out of doing my own research and into helping scientists at Corteva. So I was a part of the R&D Operations, and I handled a number of roles there. The one that I did before I left is the most relevant here. I did technology acquisition and alliance management. So we called ourselves TAM because we like our acronyms in multinational companies. And TAM was basically business development for scientists. So I worked with scientists in the R&D looking for tech for them, looking for near commercial opportunities for the business in the crop protection side of the business, where it started on the seed. And so there it was biologicals. Biologicals are my jam. Small molecule natural products, regulatory ecotox, and seed applied technologies. So this is the path, the background that I come to you with. And 2 years ago, I made a big jump and I moved into venture capital. So now I am a scientist/investor, but not a finance bro, as I was just mentioning to Pat. Maybe someday. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the venture fund that I work for because it's relevant for this conversation. So I work for a venture fund called Fulcrum Global Capital. And Fulcrum is an early-stage AgTech investment fund. What do we invest in? We invest in tech that boosts global food production. We invest in tech that reduces waste in the supply chain. And we invest in tech that does either of those things more sustainably. So that means that we'll invest from the lab bench to the farm gate. We'll invest in the supply chain past the farm gate. And we draw a line at things that touch consumers. We're not food tech investors. So broadly within AgTech, we invest in crop sciences, in animal health, animal production, in robotics, automation, software, water tech. These are the kinds of things that we like at Fulcrum. And now I'm going to share some fun investor metrics with you because you might be curious. So our current fund is $86 million. And from that $86 million, we cut checks between $1 and $4 million to startups. And the startups that we invest in are primarily Series A. So they've done a lot of technical de-risking. They're starting to form some partnerships. Maybe they're starting to pull in customers, but they haven't hit their logarithmic growth to become a big company yet. So that's our sweet spot where we like to invest. I think the coolest fact about Fulcrum Global Capital is, and the reason I joined them, is where their money comes from, where our money comes from. So 70% of our fund comes from farmers. And when I say farmers, I mean they are large elite producers located in a 15-state region in the Midwest. Communally, these farmers represent 30 million acres of row crops, 8 million acres of pasture and grazing, millions of animals under management, cattle, swine, poultry, dairy. And then they also represent auxiliary businesses in agriculture like banking and trucking and ethanol production, capital equipment dealerships, crop protection distributorships. Whatever businesses they need in their ecosystems, they usually build it for themselves. So that's where our money comes from. And with that money, Fulcrum will sometimes call itself the venture arm of the American producer. We're taking farmers' money and we're using that money to drive ag tech forward so that they can see tech in the next 5 to 10 years on their own operations. So that's how Fulcrum invests. So I was asked by Pat to provide some of our greatest hits to give us some legitimacy. What are Fulcrum's greatest hits? One was CoverCress. One of our first investments was in CoverCress. Who's familiar? Okay, almost a lot of you. Okay, so CoverCress, novel GM crop. It's pennycress. It's a cover crop, but you can harvest the seed, and the seed has a really good oil seed profile. The thing I love about CoverCress and its exit is that they had to bring the whole value stream together to get that startup off the ground. It ended up being acquired by Bayer, seed, and jointly, Bunge, crush, and then also Chevron, the eventual buyer of the biofuel. So in order for a new crop to come to life, you need a lot of big, heavy-hitting players to join up. One of our other exits was a company called Telesense, which did grain quality monitoring for shipping and transport. Obviously, not necessarily interesting on the multinational ag side like AgCP, but very interesting downstream from a farm operation. They ended up being acquired by UPL and integrated into part of their business. So those are our two exits. We have 12 portfolio companies today. One thing that I'll mention is that AgTech is a unique sector. The exits in AgTech are different than deep tech. They're different than pharma. They're different than software. Why? Because you don't make that much money. How many billion-dollar ag unicorns can you think of that were really successful? Probably less than 10. So the way that our fund invests is that we invest with the assumption that an exit for an ag startup will be between, at best, 200 to 300 million, and that exit is not going to be an initial public offering or an IPO. It's going to be merger or acquisition with one of the large multinational companies. So that's the perspective that we take on investing in ag tech. So with that background, I would like to give you guys a journey into VC 101. How many of you guys have worked with venture capitalists before? Okay, 1, Okay, one. Just stop listening. You'll be very bored. So as a scientist who moved into venture capital, I find it an interesting organism to study. And I'm going to share some of my learnings with you in case you're curious or in case you ever need this knowledge. Number one, check out the book Venture Deals by Brad Feld and Jason Mendelsohn. The subtitle of Venture Deals is How to Be Smarter Than Your Venture Capitalist and Your Lawyer. But funnily enough, anyone who moves into VC reads it too, so they also can understand their own industry. Venture is a funnel. You guys know funnels, right? It's like the basis of all science. You got a lot of hits at the top, and then only a couple things maybe that work, hopefully. Venture is a funnel. So at the top of the funnel, you have a lot of startups. You have pre-seed stage startups. You got seed stage startups. You have Series A startups. Then A, B, C, D, and so on until you get to an IPO, maybe, hopefully. We sit kind of near the top of the funnel at Series A. And our fund, there are 6 of us who manage this fund, we will see probably 600 deals per year. When I say deal, translate to a startup. We will get pitches from 600 startups a year. So we get a really broad look at what all of the new tech is that's on the scene in any one snapshot in time. And then how do we vet those 600 companies and make decisions about where we think we'll find return on our investment? The first thing that we do is a series of nesting doll conversations. So the first conversation might be just with me, and then I'll probably bring in one of my colleagues, like, what do you think of this one? Do you like it? And maybe they do. And then all 6 of us will sit down and watch a pitch together. So now we've seen this pitch 3 times. We've tortured this poor startup with 3 different meetings. And this is the point where we have a scoring rubric. Yay, rubrics. Everyone loves rubrics. So do we. And we go through the most important things that we want a startup to have at a Series A stage. What are those things? Those things include, 1, market. How big can it be? Is it really little? Is it really big? I want it to be really big to put my money into it. 2, team. As a scientist who used to do collaboration management, I was so traumatized by this. I can't tell you how many times I've heard my bosses say, I would rather see a B technology and an A team than an A technology and a B or C team. I found that just personally a little traumatizing because sometimes the science is so beautiful and so elegant. But if the team isn't going to be able to commercialize it, it's not going to make it past the next stage in that big funnel of opportunities. We also look at the technology itself and what the moat around the technology is, what will protect it from other competitors. And we look at commercial traction that they've already had, commercial traction or business development with partners. We like to see those indicators at Series A stage. And we think about the exit. What is the exit? Is it an IPO? Answer, no, it's not. It's M&A with some big multinational company, realistically, probably. And then we also look, this is the part that I always find really, really heartbreaking, at the deal economics. We're a financial investor, so we expect to return 10x of our fund to our investors. And that means that sometimes the deal economics are such that we can't get in the deal. For example, if my exit is at best $300 million and a startup has already taken in $150 million because it's a super cool robotics company, me investing $2 million into it means I'll own this much and I won't actually get very much return. So that deal is very exciting, but I can't do it. I have to do something at a different valuation. So something where they've taken in much less money, like 10 million or 15 million. That's probably where we would be investing. So that's the scoring rubric, just for us to decide if we like this startup enough to go forward. The next stage is just entering diligence with the startup. Sometimes we go into their data room and poke around. Sometimes we send them a 5-page Q&A and they send us back 100 pages to review. But we have more conversations with them. We ask them hard questions. We also want to talk to their existing investors. We want to talk to their customers. We want to talk to their partners if they're collaborating with folks. And we take all of that information and the people that we talk to, and then we decide if we still like the startup. And then if we really, really do like it, then maybe we'll offer them a term sheet where we say, hey, we will buy 10% of your company and for this much money, and then we'll sit on your board of directors. And sometimes we join other people's term sheets if a different venture capital fund has offered the term sheet. And at that point, we enter true diligence, where we actually hire people to kick the tires. So then we would hire technical consultants, we would hire legal and financial consultants to make sure that what the startup tells us is accurate. So that's the VC funnel. How many companies do you think we invest in a year after that funnel?
20.
Okay, we got 20. We got 3. Anyone else? It's not 100. It's between 1 and 3. So at Series A stage, we will make an investment in those 600 deals in between 1 and 3 companies, which is why anyone who engages with VC is going to hear a lot of no's because they don't invest in very many. So that's a little bit of background on venture capital. So you understand what you're working with if you ever decide to commercialize technology. But I also thought that maybe the most interesting thing that I could share with you guys would be pro tips on commercializing technology. I know a little bit about this, but I'm not an expert, and I've never been a startup CEO, so I've never done it. But I crowdsourced some information from some of my friends that I thought would be useful to you guys. I'm going to introduce my friends, even though they're not here right now, because I told them I would call them out if they gave me some information. Friend number 1, Vahid Adoun with Corteva Agriscience. Vahid has been in tech transfer on behalf of multinational companies his entire career, 20 plus years. Started at Cargill, went to Syngenta, ended up at Dow Agrisciences, which became Corteva. So he's been representing Corteva alongside startups and academics for a really long time. So he had some really good pro tips and a very funny example. I also consulted another friend from Corteva whose name is Gwendolyn Humphreys. Gwendolyn has a slightly different background than Vahid. She actually spent a number of years at Northwestern University in tech transfer and a number of years before that at the University of Illinois of Urbana-Champaign. And so she brings like a really cool academic background. So between Vahid and Gwendolyn, thank you guys, I have got 6 pro tips for you guys. Okay, I'm gonna list them. I don't have a slide, sorry, you can't take a picture of it. I'm gonna list them for you, and then I'm gonna go through them each one at a time, which I have time to do. Okay, pro tip number 1, know your market. Very important. That's why it's number 1. Pro tip number 2, know your value proposition within that market. Pro tip number 3, communicate. You will have to do it a lot. Pro tip number 4, manage your expectations. This is going to be a fun one. Pro tip number 5, leverage the ecosystem. And pro tip number 6, I just did 6. Okay, 6 for real, persist. So going through these pro tips, the first one, you must know your market. I think you would be surprised how many startups we talk to who don't actually know their market, which it's probably the most important thing for them to know because it affects all of the negotiations they will do, even if they don't know it. You need to know, where will you first commercialize your tech? Will it be geographically limited? Will it only be interested to some businesses? Will it have really broad applications? You'll need to know what kinds of challenges within that market that your tech has to overcome and what has been done before. It's really important to know a market. And I have an example from Vahid that I found ticklingly funny about market size. So with that, there is a university who's got 2 technologies that they want to shop to a multinational ag CP company who shall remain nameless. And 2 technologies. And they're pretty sure that both of them are going to tickle this multinational company. And they're not sure which one is going to hit, but again, they've got 2 technologies. They're basically the same thing. They're both elegant science. One of them is I really hope no one from this university is in the room right now. One of them is a transgenic peanut that is resistant to white mold. And then the other technology is a soy yield increase gene with a genetic marker natively in the plant identified. So we got 2 things. We got peanut and we got soy. This is where whoever commercializes this tech needs to know their market. On the one hand, how many US acres grow peanut? Any guesses? Okay, I see this in the back. Yes, you are correct, but it's still biggish. 1 million. 1 million for peanut. On the other hand, soy, how many US acres?
What?
Definitely more than peanut, accurate. Okay, 90 million. 90 million in the US. So we got soy and peanut. I'm already seeing a difference between our market. I don't know about you guys. Within peanut, only 30% of that acreage is affected by white mold. So now we are down to 330,000 acres. On the other side, how much of soy is affected by yield? 100%, guys. So now we've got 90 million acres that this tech can possibly apply to. But let's also look at a couple of other concepts, like what about acceptance? Who's going to accept our soy native gene that affects yield? Everyone, farmers, consumers, they'll all accept it. What about on the peanut side? That peanut transgene is going to be a GMO, and it might not receive the same consumer acceptance. Maybe it'll be okay in the US market, maybe not so much in Europe. They're just going to have some challenges there. And then lastly, let's talk about who the university is talking to. It's a multinational ag CP company which shall remain nameless, which, by the way, does not have a peanut business. But they do have a soy business, soy seed business. So I think this example illustrates the importance of knowing your market. Obviously, it is an exaggerated example, but understanding the market and where you can actually capture customers is very important as you're selling a technology to partners, to investors, and to customers later down. Okay, so that was number one, know your market. Number two, know your value proposition. This one is a little trickier. From the perspective of many a startup CEO, it is, well, obviously, this has a lot of value. I've been working on this 80 hours a week for like 5 years now. This has a lot of, and it's very elegant science, has a lot of value. Maybe, or maybe not. You know, how is your technology positioned to fill a gap? How? What gap does it fill? And within that gap, are there other solutions already on the market? Are you competing with other commercial opportunities? Even worse, are you competing with duct tape? Right? Because there's going to be some solutions that, you know, you're going to compete with something not intended for it, but it sure is cheap. So that's one part of value proposition. But when you know your other solutions and you canvassed it really well, can you identify your competitors? And can you say to an investor how and why you're better in each of those buckets? That's the part of knowing your value proposition that's really key. I think that at least half of the startups I talk to are not accurate when they show me their competition landscape slide. Sometimes they don't know that they have 3 direct competitors. So don't let that be you. Know your direct competitors and how you're better than them. Okay, pro tip 3, communicate. When you are communicating your startup, let's say you're all going to be startup CEOs with your exciting technology that is very elegant science. You are going to be selling this thing left and right. If you become CEO, half of your time at least is fundraising. You're going to communicate over and over and over and over until you probably sing it in the shower. So it's important to know who is your audience each time you are communicating your message. Is it a technical background group? Is it a financial group like an investor? Is it a commercial group that might distribute your product? Is it a business development group that just wants to collaborate or access your technology? Each one of those groups has different goals and they want to hear a different message. So expect to have different messaging for each one. It's important for you to develop a concise elevator pitch where you can tell someone like me what your technology does in less than 60 seconds. And I have to understand it with no background. So 1, you need an elevator pitch. 2, you're probably going to make a 1-pager where you put everything about your venture in one piece of paper to send out to people and hopefully get some interest. And you're also going to have the pitch deck. It is 15 to 20 slides. You might skip some. You're going to go over it many, many times, and it has to stretch between a 10-minute conversation and a 30-minute conversation. So, and it needs to have as few words as possible on each slide, because no one wants to just read the words unless you're sending it in an email and you never intend to present it. And then lastly, within communicate, practice. Practice with your kids. Practice with your financial advisor. Practice with your dentist. Practice with your spouse. Each one of those different people is going to hear different things, have different weird questions, and the more times you answer questions you don't expect, the better you're going to sound when you're asking someone for $10 million, which would be good. Okay, so we got communicate, pro tip 3. We're going to move on to pro tip 4, to manage your expectations. I'm just going to move straight from communicate into bullet point 1 for manage your expectations, and that is one conversation does not equal one commercial deal. No. You are going to have a series of building conversations for anything you want. You want an investor, you will have a series of building conversations. You want a commercial deal, you will have a series of building conversations. You want to out-license someone else's university tech, you're going to have a series of communications. You will never have that first conversation give you what you want. So build your communications such that you don't just give it all right away. Maybe you give little pieces, and then you save a little bit for later for those next conversations, because you really just want the next meeting. You want the continuation of the conversation over time. That means you've got engagement. Next bullet point, companies are competitive. Companies are competitive. Shocker, I know. What do I mean by this? I mean that if you are going to a multinational ad company, Corteva, Bayer, Syngenta, BASF, and you want to do a proof of concept collaboration, you might be doing that under non-disclosure terms. And you also might not be allowed to share the data you generate with other folks. Why? Because the multinational that you're working with has put time and money into you, and they don't want you trotting down the street to give it away for free to one of their competitors. Similarly, if you are doing a large-scale joint development agreement as a startup with a multinational company, same thing. You're probably going to have terms in there along the lines of first rights of refusal or exclusivity. Why? Because again, they put time and resources into you, and they don't want you trotting down the street and giving it away to their competitors for free. So don't be surprised when you see those sorts of things, because companies are competitive. Lastly, here in bullet point 4, which is manage your expectations, multinational companies are not service providers. You cannot go to them and say, hey, I'd like you to trial my tech, and I'd like to get data out of that so that I can bulk up my own value proposition and I know what I have. Instead, you must build value and have data of your own to go solicit the interest of those multinational corporations who are not service providers. So always have data that you own that you can share with whoever. Because you can't tell them, oh, I did that project with Syngenta and it was really great. Trust me, they might not. You will need to show them some data that you own. So with that is to manage your expectations. And the next one is to leverage the ecosystem. If you are in academia, you probably have a really great center for entrepreneurship at your university with a lot of people. Some might be entrepreneurs in residence, some might be tech transfer folks, and you can leverage the knowledge that they have and see what resources they might have. Maybe they know about grants that might be really great for the technology you're consider commercializing. Similarly, the tech transfer teams are really great sources of information, not just because they are salesmen for your tech when it becomes IP that the university owns, but also because they know everybody. They know all the other tech transfer teams everywhere. They're really well networked, so they can usually provide introductions that you might like to other organizations. And then similarly, you can also leverage incubators and accelerators. There, you will probably find mentors, you probably find access to investors, you find people who will help you practice and stretch your CEO fledgling wings. But sometimes incubators and accelerators are going to take a piece of the pie. They might take a little bite of equity. So be sure that you understand what you have to give up to get the mentorship from something like an accelerator. And then the last thing that I'm going to share right on time is to persist. Just like being a child actor. If you are commercializing your technology, this is going to be exactly the same. Are you ready? Just like being a child actor, you are going to hear no over and over and over again. It'll destroy your self-esteem, but you will have to dust yourself up and say the next conversation is a different conversation, and you must persist and share people what your value proposition is, even if you feel really bummed out from the no's that you're getting. Because some of those no's are going to be, well, it's not the right time, or you guys aren't at the right stage, or I really want to see you get this regulatory approval. So sometimes those no's turn into yeses over time. And those are my 6 pro tips for commercializing your technology. I had another section, but I think I'm going to pass on it today. But I will say I love startups to death, and it's actually why I moved into venture capital. I love working with startups and seeing their struggles and trying to help them network and overcome those struggles. And if you're considering commercializing your tech, I am in your court. You can probably maybe do it, and you should at least try. You should at least try. So with that, if you guys have questions for me, I will stand up here in the hot seat.
Any questions so far? There's a question to the right.
Thank you so much for that very important discussion. As I said, my startup, I have a startup, but it's working in 4 countries in Africa, and we're doing a POC in New York and in Iowa. But now, can you tell us about the commercialization from one country to another? Because we find a lot of problems.
Yes.
A need. We find there's a country that wants you to bring their tech in that country, but there's a lot of challenges you face into establishment. So what are the take-out you can give to make sure people can learn from you? Thanks.
Okay, well, I'm gonna start by telling you I'm no expert here, so you should consult like a real expert. Some of the challenges, it depends on who you're working with. Are you working between universities? Are you working between your institution and a multinational corporation? If you're working with one of the MNCs, then they probably have international teams. When I was at Corteva, I was able to leverage regional teams who knew more about the tech transfer than I did. Another one of the big challenges in that space was shipping. You know, if I wanted to trial something in a different geography, just shipping could be really challenging. But again, if you have a multinational partner, they probably have experience to help you with that. I think a university entrepreneurship office has probably seen it before. You would just need to find someone who has done the cycle before and can give you some really solid advice for your use case. So your challenge really is to find exactly who has that experience, hopefully in the specific geographies, to answer some of the questions that you have.